Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome to the... Man,
Oh, shit.
I haven't messed that up in a while.
Crash and burn.
Oh my
Notorious Scoundrels, welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
God. Started on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay and John Bushfax Bushman. What's up, gentlemen?
Hi, Kyle.
Hey.
Sorry, we're all giggling here because I just got done butchering the opening,
Yeah.
which I have not done in a while. So
No, you really haven't. I
Yeah.
always there's always that moment between no and Torious is where it always seems to catch you. And so I'm like, I always wait every week, but no, you've been really good. This has been the first week in a long time.
I was excited, hoping we were going to keep it.
Oh,
Jay's
we
like,
are.
Nah.
No, we are.
Oh, all of it.
Yeah, no, we are.
The double count in and
the
everything.
double count.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll keep
Okay.
it all. Don't worry about it.
All right.
It's here. They heard it.
Classic.
Anyway, we have a lot to talk about today. We got the last of our 4 preview articles talking about movement,
Yeah.
which I know John has some opinions on.
No.
John.
Me? Opinions?
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to quickly hit some Invader news because that one is down to the top 2, the final table, if you will. And we haven't really talked about that in a while. So we're going to hit that briefly. And then, we'll see what else we have time for. But before that, you got any housekeeping for us, Jay?
Yeah, I do. So we've been kind of keeping it light the last few weeks, but just as a reminder, you can join us on Patreon to help support the blog and the podcast and all that. We've been giving away some cool stuff. We did, let's see, we did the Battle Force cards a couple months, 6 months ago. Then we do quarterly rewards. So then this past quarter in October was we did the updated errata cards. We did some of those we printed, and we've got the next ones which are going to be coming out at the end of January, beginning of February. We're going to do some more errata cards, but then we're also going to be doing some other cool things. We've got we're going to do some 50-50 dice, so the chance cubes, we're going to do something like that for our Patreon members. And then we're also going to do some special tokens. We did the exhaust tokens, which were little like sleepy clouds with Z's in them. So I'm going to do like a more advanced version of that with one of our new printing machines. So we're going to hand out some of those tokens, and then I think I'm going to put in some bounty tokens in there too. So those are going to be the $25 level. We'll get all of that. The $10 level will get a portion of that. And then we've got to send out the $5 level ones too, which will get something less than that. I haven't really decided what those portions are and who's getting what yet, but 25 gets it all. So if you're a $25 level member on our Patreon, you get all the really jazzy cool stuff. $10 you still get cards and some neat 1 or 2 tokens, and then $5 is usually just cards. So yeah, so that's what we'll do there. I want to hear from the listeners. A lot of people still been reaching out about the Gar Saxon cards. I don't want to do that for free again. And so my question to you, the listeners, is would that be an interesting Patreon thing? Like if you sign up at, I don't know, a certain dollar level, that for X number of months you can get a Gar Saxon card. And I don't know. I got to think about that. I haven't really just people keep asking, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. It costs us a lot of money to do that. Like we said, we sent out about 5,000 cards, and it was probably like 70 cents a person, right, to send those out. So that's almost $5,000 that took to make that happen.
Just in stamps.
Yeah. Right.
No,
Yeah.
never mind your tongue from licking all those envelopes.
Yeah, right. Well, I made somebody else do that.
Yeah,
But
I know.
yeah. No, we got the peel ones, of course. I didn't want. What's that Seinfeld episode where George's girlfriend or wife dies from licking envelopes?
Yep.
Yeah. So no, we got the peel ones, but yeah, it was quite expensive and time consuming to do, which we were happy to do, but I don't want to do it again for free. So and I can't sell the cards either. So I need to find out another way to do that. So I don't know. Let us know, comment, tell us a good way to do that, what you guys would be willing to, because I really can't think of one outside of joining Patreon, but then like tracking that and
If it was
Yeah.
like a separate Patreon tier, I don't know. I
yeah,
don't
like a
fully
Gar
know. Like,
Saxon Patreon.
The
Yeah,
Gar
like-
Saxon tier.
Yeah.
The chin tier.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not incredibly familiar with Patreon, but I imagine you could do like tiers, and then
Yeah.
you could do like an off tier.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, we could create another tier for it, and then hey, but you got to stay in for like X months to, I don't know. Write in,
Yeah.
tell us. So that's Patreon. Join that. Blah blah blah. That's all good. The other thing is, so when you are listening to this, which will be the 28th of December, roughly that same day or maybe the day after, we're going to be launching a new thing that we came up with called Fifth Trooper One Shots. And basically what they are these cool little stories that come with their own battlefield cards, new upgrades that we've come up with, and then also we're putting in alt art of like the generic components, so like standing orders, some of the generic upgrades, objective tokens. We're going to do some nice acrylic tokens, and basically what it is, there's like these cool stories that it's kind of like a narrative, kind of like Stormtide, but like a condensed version that doesn't go on month to month to month. So you get one, even though we're going to be putting them out probably once a month. You don't have to keep going. They're not like, it's not a subscription. You can just buy one or two, or and they don't tie in together. They're completely new stories that we're writing, and you'll get a set of battlefield cards, so the objective, condition, deployment. You'll get this that's going to be released in January is going to have 3 new upgrade cards that we came up with, and these upgrade cards basically you use for the one shots, and you can if you do more than one shot, you can continue using these upgrades. And then we're going to do a bunch of alt arts, cool new art for the stuff you already have. So this kind of like, there's a lot of people that wanted to get into Stormtide but weren't really like into the like mystery box scenario, and I know that it's hard to like commit to a monthly subscription model, and so we're doing I thought this would be a cool way for other people to kind of get in on this and get some alternate cards, get some cool new battlefields that they can play, battlefield situations that they can play with their friends to kind of, if you're tired of the current battlefields. We've got some really cool ideas. Like this first one has some like time travel type stuff going on. So like one of the conditions, you basically like roll a die on the condition card, and if you roll a block, you perform the same action for a second time, like kind of like breaking all the rules. So you announce your action, you're like, hey, I'm going to attack this unit, right?
Try a double attack.
Yeah, and then you can do it twice on a roll, right? If you roll another thing, you actually don't get to perform the attack. And then or whatever that action, and then you only have one action left, like kind of you got rewound, like you went to run and then it like rewound you back. And then then a blank does nothing. But yeah, so we got these cool different ideas and stories. And for those of you that play Stormtide, no worries, these are not retreads. So we're not retreading any of the stories from Stormtide. These are completely unique one shots that are taking place in a galaxy sort of near the galaxy far away. It's our own stories, our own IP, just using the Legion rule set. So look for
whatever they may be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was really tough when I was working on this. they started and they like announced the first rules change, and I was like, oh, like I was like, yeah, all right, I gotta be careful what I work on, but I think I got some stuff that they're probably not gonna. I mean, I don't think they're gonna touch, but who knows? But yeah, anyway, so check out that'll be out the 28th, probably at some point after the podcast is out. So one shot,
December
triple one
28th or
shots.
January?
Pre-order will be up December 28th, and then we're
Nice.
gonna it'll be released January 20th is when you'll have
Cool.
them in your hands.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think it's, I don't know. Let me, again, let us know once you see what's going on. It's just an idea that I had, and just trying to get people to keep playing Legion and have different ways of playing. And, and if you're not 100% into, biting off the monthly of Stormtide, you can play these one shots. And then if you like these, you'll definitely like Stormtide. So, just check it out.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. That's enough.
All right. Well, how about we hit super quick? Let's hit the invader list first before we get to our main topic, which is the movement stuff. So Invader League is, for those that are unfamiliar, we've talked about it at various times on this cast before, but it's an online tournament of roughly 200 people. And there's 2 stages. We are currently in the last stage, which is the it's called, man, I'm blanking. It's like
Grand
international
finals.
elims, grand finals, yeah. Which was after the regional elims, which was itself after round robin. So these players have played, I think at this point, 10 rounds. 10 rounds.
Oh, how many was in Grand?
Grand was either 2 or 3, depending on your region. I think for both of these players, it was 2.
The final.
What's that?
No,
final was 3. Because there was 12 players.
Okay.
Now that,
So each region kind of had different size brackets.
Yeah, it's 4 total. There were some buys and stuff.
Yeah.
So there were 12 players that made it to grand finals. 4 players had buys. So this is the 4th round of grand finals. So the 2 players, which are Snyder and Ringmaster 80, have both played 10 games at this point, and this is their 11th game. So
10 games of Swiss would be like 1,000-player tournament.
Yeah, it's well, it's not, and it's not quite Swiss, which is why
right.
There are some stages where you can advance with a loss.
Right.
Specifically round robin.
I think only round robin.
Only round robin. Yeah. You can advance with sometimes more than 1 loss in round robin, because it's basically it's not Swiss, it's like a league, round robin league, where you have 5 other players in your group and everybody plays everybody. And then they sort the top 2 from each of those groups, and then those players play in regional elims, and then the top 12 from that play in grand finals. So congrats to both Snyder and Ringmaster 80. I don't want to go over the list in like super detail, because both of them are going to be illegal
Yeah, I was seeing that there.
In whatever it is now, 3 weeks. When the points, actually technically the points go live before the rules, don't they? So these
technically, yes.
Anyway, Snyder's list is going to be 848 points.
Yeah.
It's a Shadow Collective list with Pikes, Maul, a bus, and a unit of Black Suns. So slightly different than like the quote unquote standard Pike spam template. He's got a bus in there instead, and some Black Sun, but it's Maul, Pikes, bus, basically. And then Ringmaster has Republic Pikes. Essentially, it's basically Anakin, Padme, Pikes. Yeah.
Defensive Anakin.
Defensive Anakin, lots of dodges. So
lots of dodges and barrier.
Yeah, the barrier is interesting. I actually looked at this list a lot because this was the player that I was matched up against before I ended up having to drop. So I like it. It's very. I've considered including barrier a lot, quite a few times on Anakin, because Anakin is one of those. He's most of the time a support force user. You know, you want him close to your clones anyway, so that they can spend his surges. So, you know, barrier seems like a natural fit for him. If he had 3-4 slots, I think I'd take it all the time. It's kind of a hard sell for me over saber throw because his saber throw is so good. Especially as a fire support starter, you know, starting off a fire support with 3 red, surge crit, pierce 3, impact 3 is pretty good.
It's all right.
But yeah, I dig the barrier. It's an interesting idea, but this one is also, despite being a Republic list, you know, we talked about this with the points, this one is also over 800 because of the increases to the pikes. He's got vigilance in here.
Vigilance went up 7, which is
he actually has 2 copies of vigilance. So
that alone.
So
overcame the clone decreases.
Overcame the clone decreases. So yeah, congrats to Ringmaster and Snyder. Good luck. They might have actually played by the time this comes out. I don't know. So, but we'll see.
Nice.
Yep. All right. Shall we hit the thing? The movement thing.
The movement thing.
So this comes in 2 parts. I think the first one is not going to be that controversial, or at least it isn't for me. So let's hit that one first, and then we'll talk about the vertical thing. Because everyone's been talking about the vertical movement thing. Everybody else forgets about the first part that was previewed.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about.
All right. Why don't I?
It's easy peasy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It up.
So the short version. I don't feel like I need to read this word for word. Yeah, right. You're like, oh, obviously. Yeah. So basically, it's
how soon we forget the ones we're like, no, that's right. That was the right move, and we just move on to the things we don't.
Right.
Like. Yeah.
Focus on the bed.
Yeah.
So the change is that when you move a unit, you just place it at the end of the tool.
Boom. Perfect.
That's it. Which and most people are like, wait, how is this a change? Isn't that what everybody does anyway?
Nope.
No. At least that's not what you're supposed to do. Historically, the rules are that I wish I had a movement tool in my immediate vicinity, but basically, you know, you suppose this pen is a movement tool, right? There you go. Yeah, there you go. There's a movement tool. You're supposed to actually like move the minis. This is actually a miniature. Move the minis base along the tool.
Which I can show you.
Yeah, there you go. Which can cause issues if you're running into obstacles that are like bumped up against the side of the tool. Yeah. Because in theory, like if you're, you know, at the corner of a building or something, it would get really awkward. A lot of people just there was kind of like 3 categories of people. There was people that knew about the rule and like stringently stuck to it. There was people that knew about the rule and just blatantly ignored it because it was dumb. And then there was, I think, probably most Legion players, which like didn't even know that this was a thing, and just did what they're essentially now codifying as what you're supposed to be doing, which is just put the mini at the end of the tool. So I think this is great. This is one of those situations where like this is a no-brainer change simply because most people were already doing this because the original rule was kind of unnecessary.
Right. So. And to stop any confusion, this isn't notched base.
Yes.
It's only trooper minis.
Only small base trooper minis.
Yeah.
Yep.
So because it always made sense for like notch base ones because it's like, okay, well, for instance with me, like can the Gav tank actually make it through this space, or can this E-Web move through this tight space, right? That makes a little bit more sense. But like when you're talking about troopers who, if you're really thinking about it, they're like on their feet, they could just like sneak by the thing, right? And be like, yeah, I got by it like without a problem, so it's good.
Great.
Yeah, so in these, the vehicles are going to be able to squeeze through like 1-inch spaces if their movement gets them out the other side.
No, because it doesn't apply to notches. That's what
I just said.
that's what Jay literally just said.
Come
I
on,
don't
buddy.
see where it says it doesn't apply
John
to
doesn't.
notches.
John doesn't listen to me.
It's not in the screen cap. It is in the paragraph before the screen cap.
Okay.
It says the movement of miniatures on notched bases remains unchanged.
Okay.
Um,
I don't listen to Jay.
No.
So
Clearly, you
fine.
were reading instead of
Yeah.
listening to Jay.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, it says, at least in the article, that this does not apply to notch bases, which makes perfect sense because, like you said, Jay, it would be weird and immersion breaking.
Yeah.
But part of why this makes sense to do for troopers and why most people ignored it anyway is like the movement tool is really only slightly smaller than a trooper's base anyway.
Mm.
You know, it's like probably 3 millimeters on each side, roughly.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. The notch base, some notch base units are like 6-inch wide bases. So you've got like 2.5 inches on each side of the tool that you have to account for, which makes a lot more sense to have to do that. But yeah, for small base troopers, most people were doing this anyway. So
yeah,
good
and
change.
I would say very rarely did it ever come up on real tables. This was more of a TTS thing that seemed to come up more for me. It would be like, all right, I want to squeeze between these two things with this trooper and be like, well, can he if he follows the movement, and it's like, oh, for God's sake.
I always felt like such a douche doing that.
I know.
Yeah.
But it was the rule, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you were a douche doing that, but
yeah,
it's fine.
I mean, sometimes it mattered. Sometimes
No, it did.
that 1/2 inch or the 1 or 2 inches from taking the wider corner. Like,
yeah.
I am the person that when you play me, for anyone who plays me, I'm pretty like, yeah, cool, man. Yeah, fine. He can move through there. And that's just how I play. But I don't hate against people who actually play who are rules. I mean, that's what the rules are there for. So I'm fine following the rules, but I'm also fine given a little leeway. But if Kyle or John or somebody really wants to play by the rules, the real rules as written, and really do it, then we do it that way, and so I was always okay with it. This is good. This is a good. I feel like we do this with each rules change that they've made, where we're like half of it roughly, we're like, yeah, no, that's good. And then you're like, and then they're like, and you're like, no.
Just stop. Just end there.
You had it. You had it. It was good.
I felt like that with the panic changes.
Yeah.
Like everything that was actually in the article, which is like units not fleeing. All right, whatever. I kind of enjoyed making units flee. That seemed like cool.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Kind of helped Mandos though. That was nice to hear. Like,
yeah,
it was one of their weaknesses.
So that's whatever. Slightly less complicated. Panic is still something that costs unit actions. All right, fine. Yep. But then they go do the panic timing change. It's like, oh, hang on, the change was good. Now anyway, I'm less clear on this one. Once we get to the second part, I have a less clear opinion on it. Let's put it that way. John, would you like to read the climbing rules?
Reading the whole thing.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Miniatures can make standard moves onto or through obstacle terrain that is shorter than the height of the moving unit's silhouette. When placing the movement tool, it may not overlap an obstacle terrain feature that is taller than the moving miniature's silhouette. When a unit is overlapping an obstacle terrain feature, it may perform a standard move if the vertical distance changed is not greater than the height of the moving unit's silhouette. If they wish to move onto, off of, or through obstacle terrain greater than the height of their silhouette, they must instead perform a climb. Miniatures or notched bases may not climb. Miniatures on notched bases.
All right, I want to stop you right there because there's a part that's relevant to this section that's actually in the text of the article and not the rules, and it's not super clear what this means. So I want to get your guys' opinions on it. It says units may not move over obstacle terrain shorter than the height of their silhouette with no penalty. Thoughts?
Wait,
I I think I've heard people say back and forth that they're not sure what this means. I think, yeah, it would be good if they clarified obstacle terrain features, but I think they intend every piece of anything on the board, excluding maybe area terrain. But I think this would say you could move over barricades without slowing.
So there's a couple of perspectives on this.
Yep.
And there's a relevant sort of going back to the thing about the movement tool, that there's kind of a difference between rules as written, or maybe not a difference, but there's like rules as written, and then there's kind of like a common way to interpret said rules and do them. So right now, it is common when classifying terrain to basically say that, like, unless something is specifically classified as open terrain, like light woods, or usually it's light area terrain that's classified as open terrain, that if you're moving over it, it is essentially difficult terrain. In other words, anytime a miniature is moving over something, unless you specifically said it's open at the beginning of the game, you slow down.
Default.
That's kind of like the common parlance, at least in competitive play. And that, I think, is primarily because barricades are specifically called out as difficult terrain, and most terrain objects that are not area terrain are barricade-like objects, scatter terrain. It could be like, a building that has a ledge that's lower than a silhouette or something like that. Basically, in all of those situations right now, the common understanding is that you have to slow down if you're doing that.
Yeah.
It's hard to say without seeing the text of this and what they mean by, quote, obstacle terrain, whether this is intended to just make it so that all those interactions are now effectively unhindered. It kind of seems like it is. But I've also seen players be like, well, you still have to talk about what difficult terrain is, quote unquote, before the match.
If that's even still a thing in the rule book, if they're overhauling the whole rule book, like,
I mean,
these
maybe
are not
it's
the
not.
only
I don't know.
changes they're making.
But if we assume that it is still a thing,
Right.
What you would have to say is, like, can we agree that whenever you're moving over a piece of terrain, it's difficult terrain? And I think probably in practice, what this will do, unless we're missing some text here about difficult terrain not being a thing anymore, is it will kind of like flip the default.
Yeah.
From, the default being like, unless we said it's open, you slow down. It'll be like,
yeah,
unless we said
you
it's
don't
difficult.
slow down, basically.
Yeah.
So the upshot probably of this is that, for the most part, unless you're moving through like a swamp or something, most units are going to basically have unhindered.
Yeah.
We'll see, but that's my...
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think the biggest question to me is, by doing what, like, if it is what Kyle's saying right now, you're basically just like killing 3 or 4 keywords, or like really mixing up 3 or 4 keywords.
We haven't even got to the climb stuff yet.
Yeah, right. But
this one,
just with this,
yeah,
you don't even need to get to the climb stuff, right? There's 3 keywords that this is, that are just like, okay, that's worthless now, like unhindered.
Yeah.
It becomes the, I guess I can cross swamps and dense woods keyword.
Yeah.
Without slowing down.
Yes. Yeah. Unless they, the interesting thing to me is if they, well, no, because they explain the height thing, right? I was going to say, and the only thing I could see is them saying barricades are designed to be difficult and are not
which is
part
possible.
of this rule.
It's currently called out.
It's currently specifically called out.
An entry in the rule book.
Yeah. So if that stays in, and it stays in as difficult, then okay. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
but I think
I kind of like it. If that's the case, where they stay with the call out for barricades is difficult, right? And then now you can, because I feel like most conversations about a table are all like, yeah, that kind of looks like a barricade. Fine, it's a barricade.
Scatter terrain.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be more like, okay, no, it's not a barricade. So now we need to determine if this is difficult or an obstacle that's less, less than the height of a silhouette. And I think that's an okay thing, because then that brings out barricades more, which I think we were getting away from.
They might not even include difficult terrain as a entry in the rulebook anymore.
Yeah.
It sounds like from that snippet that they don't want difficult terrain.
Maybe they don't. I don't know. But then I don't really see what unhindered does.
Right. I mean,
But-
well, so, and we can revisit this after we talk about climbing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, and I think
It's
if they do keep
applicable.
difficult terrain, and if they still call out barricades as difficult terrain, and if Jay, like you said, the natural extension of that is that most scatter terrain is going to be difficult. I think probably the biggest gray area is just going to be because Legion terrain is not uniform,
Yeah.
which I think is good. Legion terrain comes in all different shapes and sizes. But what starts to get weird is when you have like things sticking out from buildings that is lower than the height of a silhouette, like pipes or whatever, or you have, a hill, one of those like foam cutout hills that's like it got a clean edge on it, but it's lower than a silhouette. Situations like that where it's like not a barricade and it's not scatter, but it's still a thing that you move over. That's lower than your silhouette. There are tons of terrain pieces that have like bits like that. I think that's probably
right now it says that you move over it with no penalty.
right.
Right.
Which would be like a huge departure from how it's commonly done right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's their intention.
Yeah.
Which then brings up, like, I think it's going to down, and we don't know because we don't have the rule book, but cover. Like, I think it's going to start bringing up questions of cover too, because I think in our heads we associated the difficulty of climbing over a terrain that's half of our mini, with cover. You go, okay, well, I got heavy cover because it's difficult for me to climb over this. So, like, I think those connections were always
We'll
made.
have to divorce those thoughts for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's going to take some time to like be unless cover changes, but to be like, okay, so it's half of my mini, or it's up to my mini's neck. I can get over it without any penalty, but I still get heavy cover from it. Which just seems weird. But
well, it's notable that there's nothing, at least in this preview article, about vehicles.
Yeah.
And creature troopers. Vehicles and creature troopers are the ones that previously it had to be less than half their height for them to move over.
Yep.
But of course, the standard cover, agreed upon before the game conversation usually applied to it has to be more than half height.
Yep. So
with vehicles and creature troopers, either you could move over it and it didn't give you cover, or you couldn't move over it and it did give you cover, basically.
Yep.
There's no mention in here about the 50% rule with respect to movement. At least based on what we previewed, this could have the effect of making all vehicles like repulsor units for moving.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a key identifier with repulsors.
Which means an ATST can like move over everything, basically, I think.
Yeah. But the Gav tank can move over more stuff.
Yeah.
With this.
Which would be good in that case. I feel like
yeah.
the Gav tank has
Thank
always
God.
needed a special rule, but
oh, dude,
like just drive through the wall. It's a tank.
there's a barricade there.
The
can't
ATRT is
go.
pretty tall. It'd be nice
Yeah.
to move
Well,
over.
the ATRT
some
is
stuff.
also a climbing vehicle.
It is, which we have no idea if that's
Expert.
Yeah.
It's an expert climbing.
Yeah.
it is expert.
Should we get into? Well,
Yeah.
let's just get into
Yeah.
climbing.
Yeah, we need to before we can talk
Well,
more.
Okay, let's talk about this real quick. I'm okay with this, with some clarifications. I'm not really like one way or the other on this one. It's fine. I just need some more clarifications.
Yeah. And if it's trending into like everything without any movement keywords can move around easier, which it definitely is with the vertical movement, I could see it being kind of intentional that like, all right, fine, everything kind of has unhindered.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like these for vehicles. I don't like them for troopers
Yeah, it's
because it was a dynamic with the troopers.
it kind
and now
of
it's not.
cheapens the move. At least for this one specifically, it kind of cheapens unhindered.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't know. There could be what other change
Yeah.
that comes with.
Yeah.
But let's assume let's assume this is it, and
Right.
what we're saying is what it's going to be. then I want everything that has unhindered on it to come down 10 points. Because what is the point?
I don't know about 10.
But points have already been
I said 10,
released.
5. Okay, maybe 5.
Remember, heavy response units have unhindered,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
which everybody forgets.
No, those gotta go up 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so we just made a keyword.
This is the heavy
obsolete.
response unit nerf right here. Just give everyone else unhindered.
Yeah, right.
Because that was
If
definitely
everyone
the
has
thing that was
unhindered,
making them.
Yeah, then no one does.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the theme of this climbing rule, right?
Yeah.
The old Kronos meme for
Yeah.
everyone's super, no one is.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Bushman, you want to read the climbing rule?
No.
Do
it. Okay. So climbing. Sometimes units maneuver onto tall pieces of obstacle terrain. This is accomplished by performing a climb. Miniatures on notched bases may not climb. To perform a climb, a unit performs a move as normal, except that it must use the Speed 1 tool. A miniature may not move a vertical distance, or no, a miniature may move a vertical distance up to height 1 when making a climb, and may place the movement tool overlapping obstacle terrain that is taller than the height of the moving unit silhouette.
Basically, everyone gets jump with reduced
Yeah.
speed. Is the short version of this.
Reading, yeah. There's
Well, okay.
there's some
I don't
wording
like
there
how you
too.
said that.
Isn't that what it is, though?
It is 100% how it is.
Mm,
It's even slightly better than jump. Reading it right now.
Because you can do it twice.
Not only that, which also yes. But say you could have something that's 30 inches tall right up against you, and then if it gets shorter within your move to height 1, you could move through anything taller and land on that height 1. Because the miniature, the only restriction with the height 1 is where
where
the
you end
miniature's
up.
moving to. And then the
Interesting.
movement tool overlapping says it could go over taller than the height of the moving unit silhouette. They put the restriction one spot instead of both.
Yeah, I guess it
Might
could
get
be there's
clarified.
something in the full rules that like
Probably
says
won't.
you know.
Yeah, probably won't apply often, if at all.
okay.
But
Okay. Here's why I hear what you're saying, but it's not everything has jump, because jump,
ooh, let's hear it.
okay, with jump, you're still getting your full movement. So there could be cases that you're trying to get over a piece of terrain that is, let's call it 5 inches, right? With the current, this new climbing, a regular unit is only going to move 3 inches onto that 5 inches, where Luke or Sabine or somebody like that, or Boba, Empire Boba, could just clear that whole thing and keep going onto the other side. So I think
But
jump,
not if they run into another obstacle.
well, but then don't they have the same rules?
Yeah, sure. But
Right.
Well,
jump
and-
as is compared to this now. Like,
Yeah, it's speed 1 jump. That's literally what
Yes.
it is.
Okay.
It's
still, I think it's still
I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just
Right.
like,
without any changes, I think it's not jump, though.
well, jump
Because
is,
jump
if you were to
is-
leave jump alone, jump would still be faster.
Yes.
Yeah, slightly.
I mean,
It's
in some
jump
cases
for-
more, like
on
depending
some
on the
units,
unit.
on some units, this is just straight jump 1. On Vader and Palpatine,
Yeah.
it is like Vader and Palpatine had no problem handling
Okay.
Luke Skywalker. This was already like, this is a tough fight.
Okay.
And now
so maybe I'm
high ground, schmy ground.
Yeah, maybe
Like,
in my head I'm seeing the argument differently. So what I'm saying is, I think jump still has value.
Oh, it's better than like
Not
just being a
having jump.
normal schmo,
Yeah. Okay.
You're
but it's
right.
not nearly as better as it was.
Yeah.
Everyone,
So we don't. So there's a couple caveats here. The first is that they reference that some of these movement keywords, jump, scale, etc., are changing.
yeah.
They
Yeah,
have
scale. That's the one that really loses here.
Yeah, they
Scale was the
they
combination of it all.
they have
Yeah.
not said how those are changing.
Right.
Yeah.
So
January 16th.
we don't know. I find it kind of hard to imagine them not getting, at least in relative terms, cheapened or devalued, simply because to keep like the gap, if you will, the same, you'd have to almost like have jump give you an extra free move in addition to being able to,
Yeah.
change vertical distance. It'd have to be
That's the
like
value that they lost.
right. It'd have to be like you can move full speed over height 1 terrain for both moves, and when you're done, make a free speed 1 move. That would be like the value difference,
Okay, let me ask you this. Let's debate this. Could they stop at you can use jump on both your move actions, and would that be good enough?
No.
It would still be better than just normal climbing under the new rules, but it would not be nearly as big as the current delta is between normal schmoes and units that can jump.
So if you all right, let's up the ante.
Okay.
When you jump, you have jump 1, right? You get to make, before you make your jump move, you get to make a speed 1 move and then your normal jump move. With that, then
that's what Kyle was saying.
That's what I'm saying.
But without the without another action of jump.
Well,
on your
can
second
you
movement.
do the climb like everyone else?
Why wouldn't you be able to?
I don't know. I'm just saying. Like,
sure, yeah, you could. Yeah, let's say it's like everybody else, but when you jump, you get a free speed 1 move before you perform the jump action.
Yeah,
that would probably be pretty close.
It would be close. It's still like it's still decreasing the delta, but I'd say like if it was a 30-point delta, now it's like a 25-point delta with that change.
With the speed 1 thing. If you get a free move. Yeah. It's all speculation because they didn't tell us what it does.
Right.
I think this could ultimately be fine. So, of all the changes that they have previewed, personally, I find this one the most difficult to actually assess the impact of. Simply because this is such a big change for how units get around that like it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around.
Yeah, that's fair.
There are 2 kind of analogies we can use. The first is that if you've played on TTS has these like sloped hills that are pretty common on some maps, where you can essentially move like up the slope to the top of the hill, which is say height 1. Sometimes they have like multi-tier hills, whatever. If you have played on those maps, I think the best way to think about how this is potentially going to affect the game is that there's going to just be a lot more of that. And one thing, having played with a lot of those sloped hills, I think my biggest observation for those simply is that they're very good for ranged units, because you can basically, when a ranged unit crests a line of sight blocker, you're often denying cover because you're looking down, sometimes on a space that's open past that blocker, right? So you get better firing angles. You also tend to have cover on top of that. Basically, there's at least with those hills, it kind of like removes the downside from being behind a line of sight blocker. Obviously the great thing about being behind a line of sight blocker is, at least from the angle that the blocker blocks, you can't be shot. But there's like an opportunity cost there because you have to spend a lot of actions getting around it or over it right now. With this change, it kind of removes a lot of the opportunity cost of being behind a line of sight blocker.
Removes the cost.
It doesn't remove it entirely. It's more like
but it more removes the cost, less it doesn't really remove the benefit.
Exactly. So right, you still get the benefit of when you're behind it, can't be shot.
Right. But
it removes the cost of like overcoming that obstacle. And I can't decide whether that's good or not. I think it's possible that this could actually lead to more passive play. Because previously, if you were like chilling behind a line of sight blocker, the cost of doing that was that you could not interact with your opponent.
Yeah.
For this, now if you're chilling behind that line of sight blocker, you can do a last first. You can use, I guess we don't know how this interacts with keywords like steady, but in theory, you could use keywords like steady to do like peekaboo stuff on top of that blocker.
Yeah.
They called it a climb, and a climb is currently a move action, so it would currently trigger steady relentless charge.
Yeah, it's the
Wow. So
I mean, it's like charging with your scale
so you could
or with your jump.
move Vader up,
Yep.
saber throw,
Yep.
then move back.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
If climb
Now
stays as a move
JCs.
action,
Ah,
yeah, now you see it. No, I mean,
that's
so
good.
I I think it's possible that one outcome of this is, since you are making it easier to interact with your opponent while also being on the downside, opposite side of a line of sight blocker, that could lead to more passive play. I don't know. Maybe that's offset by more units moving over stuff in general.
I don't think it is
I don't know.
offset because the only ones that wanted to get close already had, in unhindered and scale already. All but like IRG
Yeah,
had
it's
to
clear.
pay for the gear.
It's clear that ranged units are the clear winner here because most melee units, except Vader, who's obviously a clear winner here,
Yeah.
already had mobility keywords that let them get over stuff.
Yeah.
Most saber users have jump. Most melee units have jump or scale. So you got close range units like Mandos, obviously, that have jump. So the biggest winners here are normal schmoes that are ranged units.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Jump. I don't know. I'm not 100% with you guys on that. I think jump still has value. Sure, it went way down. I understand what you're saying, but I still think it's good. The one that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is scale. Like and how that would work. Like
Right.
it's the same, I guess, right? If your base, you go up automatically, you get a free speed, your speed move. You go down, you get another free speed move on that second move action or something, I guess. But like, I don't know how that affects that value as much. I guess the only thing it does is it kind of stops, like, there's different interactions now with like Wookiees coming over a building. Well, now I can easily get something up. Like if I have IRG or something, right? I could easily get Royal Guard up there and be like, no, go ahead, deal with these guys now,
Well, with respect to scale, if I could make a potential observation here,
please. That's what we do.
And unfortunately, they didn't explicitly call this out in the article, but I think this is a sort of hard to argue with benefit of this rule, at least, is that it makes moving over and around terrain more uniform, insofar as like you don't care as much about like what actually qualifies as a vertical edge for purposes of climb. Because you had weird things before where, like, what happens if you have like one of those Endor trees and there's a platform on top of it, like, and you're at the bottom of the tree. Do you end up, like, where do you end up on the platform? Do you go to the edge? If you've got like an overhanging cliff, is it the same thing? If you've got like a sloped thing where there's like a platform here but not here, can you climb from here to here, kind of a thing? It kind of eliminates the ambiguity around that. So if that's what one of the intentions of this change was, then I could see scale kind of scrapping that, like, base, do a base move, do a clamber thing, do another free move thing. And if that's the case, I have a hard time like envisioning what it would actually look like. But
it could be same thing, right? To climb, you do the speed one move, then you get your full move benefit. You know, that would give scale a little bit of a bonus.
So while
that'd
you bring
be
that up again,
way better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to kind of drive home how much jump got devalued. So yes, sure. As is with current jump and with climbing as we see it, yes, jump is better because you get your full speed.
Mhm.
But that is the equivalent of, say, a stormtrooper squad trying to move over a barricade in old rules. You know, they have to slow down. They go from speed 2 to 1, they lose 2 inches of movement.
Mm.
And the Wookiees, with their unhindered, they move over that for free.
Right.
Well, the stormtroopers, they pay 2 points and they could copy that to gain the 2 inches.
Yeah, and
So the current difference between climbing now and jump is a 2-point upgrade.
Well, and I think it's more interesting too if you look at like cables, right? Ascension cables give you scale for 4 points, but they're exhaustible.
Right.
But also if you just look at it in terms of action costs, right? If suppose you have a wall, right, and you've got a unit here and they want to get up here. Previously, and let's for a moment ignore the fact that there would be a dice roll involved here that could potentially kill models.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Previously it would take them 1, 2, 3 actions to get to that spot. Whereas it would take a unit with jump 1 action. So that's a full 2 action benefit that jump unit gets from going from, the ground up to the
Yeah, that's
thing.
kind of like the
Um,
max it gains is the 2 actions, because they're not always a move away from the building, and they're not always a move deep into the
Sure, but
elevated terrain.
it's potentially 2 actions,
Yes,
at
yeah,
least
the
1
potential.
action,
Yes.
and a dangerous terrain test.
Yes.
So if you
Yes.
factor in like to avoid the dangerous terrain test, you'd have to do 2 actions on the climb, then it's potentially like 1, 2, 3, 4
Yep.
actions versus 1. So it's really as many as 3 actions, which is like a turn and a half worth of actions that the jump unit is gaining over the normal.
Yep. Or their alternative of moving around. Like if you're jumping over a piece of LOS blocking terrain, like still moving around most of those terrain is 2 or 3 actions.
Hmm.
Do we lose Kyle's mic?
Maybe. I think.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Kyle.
Nope.
No,
There he is.
There he is.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, okay, yeah. Here's my question. They're clearly going to do something with expert climber,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, they
'Cause
up the points.
they up the point on the
That was
grappling
weird.
hooks. So, I mean, so expert climber now is while clambering, do not roll defense dice or suffer wounds, right? So is expert climber going to move to you can do the climb, but instead of speed 1, you're now your full speed?
That makes the most sense.
If that's what it is, though, 2 points is not even close to enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
Why not?
You take that on everything. It's 2 points.
But it's so
I mean, it's more
that's
than
the
1
difference
point.
between E-gear and a unit without E-gear. You're moving over difficult terrain. Climbing is now a difficult move. That's what they've done. So right, you go from your 4-inch move to your 6-inch move on vertical buildings, or before with difficult terrain on the flat battlefield.
Yeah, but I think it's a
4
little more
points is more
valuable
expensive than E-gear.
when you're talking about. No, it's not 4 points though. It's 2. It's going from 1 to 2.
No, what's E-gear right now though?
1.
1. So
Yeah,
1 compared to 4, like it is more expensive.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Eager is 2,
Okay.
but hooks are going up to 2 from 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were going 2 to 4.
No, they're going 1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Okay.
1 to 2. 1 to 2.
So I mean, so my analogy still applies.
Yeah, I guess if you're
More
talking about
valuable.
vertical movement, those extra inches are a little bit more valuable simply because somewhere in there you have an edge that
Yeah.
you have to clear. And
Yeah.
like the extra 2 inches could be the difference between like falling short of the edge and actually getting over the edge.
It might, and it might not.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just an interesting, like that clearly went up 1 point, and the only thing is expert climber, right? So that's clearly going to change.
Yeah.
And my only thing I could think of was like, oh, instead of a speed 1, they're going to make it
So-
your full movement. You
so if
ignore
they
the
do that-
effects.
If they do that with expert climber, like who knows what unhindered and scale and jump are gonna get.
Right.
Yeah, who knows?
But now that we've talked about climb, I want to circle back to the last one, because it kind of reinforces my thought on why movement is just open.
Okay.
Because now it does not make sense if they would make you move, if they would make you climb over a barricade, because that's what it would then be if you're reducing your speed.
If you go
Like-
speed 1 over a barricade, that would be the same as climbing
A
up the
hip
building.
height barricade that's not going to be actually hard to move over, or climbing a 15-foot building. Like,
Yeah.
not the same thing. So that's why I think that they're moving to open, but we'll have to see.
It's wild.
It's a big benefit for all those normal schmucks
Yeah.
that don't have movement keywords.
All the normal schmucks I don't like to play.
Yeah, I guess for me,
You know who's got a lot of normal schmucks? Sorry to interrupt you, Jay.
Yeah, Blizzard Force.
Yeah.
Empire.
Yeah,
Empire. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. It's, I know we're supposed to react to all this stuff, but like without the context of all the keyword changes, I'm just like, I mean, it seems fine. And if they like bump everything up to match or change jump completely to mean something even cooler, okay, cool. I'm on board. I mean, I don't know. They
Yeah.
haven't done nothing that they've done so far has really deeply concerned me about breaking the game. It's more of how different it is, and it's hard to tell what it's gonna do, but I'm not like, oh great, they just ruined this game. Like nothing's making me think that. It's just making me think of how the different interactions are gonna be now, and I'm still not caught up on it. Does that make sense? Like I don't feel
Is that a good standard to like measure it against though? Is that like a huge lowering of expectations to be like, oh, thank God we can still play Legion?
Yeah, well, I guess the only reason I say it like that is just because of how concerned we were going into it based on, some of the other stuff that's happened.
Is
But
AMG paying you, Jay? Are you getting paid here?
No, I'm just, listen, overall, anything that makes this game a little bit quicker, a little bit easier to play, I'm all for it, because I know you guys really like the high level competitive play. I get it. I just, man, sometimes when it's like, you're in like your third match of like almost 3 hours, and you're like, I can't keep doing this, man. Like sometimes it just can become a slog. And I think for me, I'm really looking forward to it speeding up a little bit, becoming a little bit easier to just like play, and to have a good time and to play the game. And I don't think they're cutting the knees out from competitive too bad. Like, sure, there's a little bit of stuff that you guys enjoyed doing, like peeking on the corner of my silhouette and I couldn't see you back. Like that's, I get that.
I never enjoyed that actually. I like
yeah.
reciprocal line of sight. It's the
Yeah.
center lines that I miss more.
Right,
I miss
but
the center lines a lot more.
Center lines, panicking. Like, I don't know. Like all of that, I was just kind of like, yeah, it's just different. It's not like, I don't know. I'm more positive on this, I think, than most people. I'm like,
None of these really feel like they were time sinks. Like, I don't know.
I think that's kind of where I'm coming from, though. Like, is it fair for us to measure the standard of like, well, they didn't break Legion, so this is good. My standard is kind of like, were these actually necessary and do they improve the game?
Yeah.
I think the jury is definitely out on some of these.
I think improve is subjective to how you play and what you're looking to get
Well,
out of the game.
That's also fair.
Yeah.
But
I think it makes some stuff easier for sure for
And
newer players to understand, I think.
here's one thing I could definitely think you could say, particularly with this change, which again, I don't have a positive or negative opinion about this. I could end up liking this one. The panic change is a different story, but between this and the panic change, I think you can pretty confidently say that at minimum, it pretty significantly changes the value of a lot of units in the game and abilities. So even if you could say that like these changes end up being kind of neutral for the play experience, we were at a point where like I think it was pretty well understood which units needed addressing for balance purposes, and then otherwise Legion was actually in like a pretty good spot overall balance wise. And look, I don't envy AMG for having to try and balance a miniatures game. Balance is super difficult. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It's extremely worth doing. But I guess my point is like we were in a spot where I think we were actually very close to having like a very balanced game of Legion.
Yeah.
And now they've made all these changes, which may or may not have been necessary, which at minimum wildly throw off the valuation of a lot of units in a way that is at some point down the road going to need to be looked at again.
That's fair.
If we want a balanced game. And I've seen people be like, well, evaluate the change based on you know, like just on its merits, ignore the effect on the current balance of the game and the current units in the game. And it's like you can't really do that though, because
Right.
I don't think, you know, they've said openly that like their resources are limited. So I don't think that you can just like assume that like perfect balance is going to follow on to these changes.
No.
And I think too, like if a change creates a bunch of value distortions, like that's a component you have to include in whether or not it ends up being a good change or not. That's got to be one of your factors. So
yeah. Well, and I think resource restrictions are not, even back in the FFG days, like I don't know how big their testing group is with AMG, but even back in the FFG, you know, they had 2 developers, they had a robust testing group, like they had all this stuff. I think they didn't even see the causality of rules changes or new rules until, you know, the world got a hold of them for at least like 4 to 6 months, right? And then some maniac like Kyle or Luke or John or somebody, you know, like goes, oh yeah, they missed this one, and then starts crushing everyone for like months, right? With some insane list. That always happens. But yeah, I see what you're saying. There's so many changes with this that you're like, I don't know the valuation of anything anymore because the rules are different now, right? Like
and
that's,
you have to acknowledge that that's like a cost that we're essentially paying.
right.
And like maybe these will be better in the end. Maybe they'll do a bunch of like extremely effective on point points changes to target how these changes affect various units.
I would have thought those
that
would have
be...
come earlier in this month though.
Well,
they haven't had
changes.
enough. Yeah,
if
but I don't
you
think
have
they've had enough testing with it. I don't.
Well, that's the thing. If you have unlimited resources, ideally that's how you would do it.
Yeah.
But it seems like, you know, and a lot of people commented in the points changes that they were like super conservative, clearly just addressing like the most obvious broad brush themes. Made the comment like, okay, clearly they did that to kind of hit the obvious things, and they're waiting to see how these rule changes affect things before doing more points changes. I think that has to be the case.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, like some of these are, you know, you would have seen a bunch of cuts to jump units or scale units. You know, if you were looking at, even if you set aside these rules changes, right, you should have seen cuts to rebel units that, you know, use dodges a lot but are not good.
Yeah.
Like Jin or Leia or Rebel Mandos, you know, like even if you set aside the rules changes because they nerfed dodge spam kind of across the board, but they didn't, give anything back to the bad units that use dodges. So
Yeah.
I think the optimist in me wants to be like, they're not married to the yearly timeline anymore. They're going to look at how these changes affect balance, and they're going to do a bunch of points changes as a result. Or, alternatively, right, if it turns out that some of these changes are ones that people really don't like, maybe they just roll them back or tweak them in a different, like we talked about, like some of these, like all these changes, it seems like one part of it is like, oh yeah, that's great, obviously, that's an amazing change, and then you get to the subtext and you're like, oh wait, hang on. So I don't know. I'd like to think that they're open to that kind of feedback, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess too, though, from a marketing perspective, I really appreciated how they did this from a holistic standpoint, because we've already seen in 2 or 3 of the articles that they put out where they put all this stuff out, everyone was like, oh my God, what about this? And then they had to do a clarification, like, and go, oh, no, that's in there. And and this is how it's going to work. So, I just wonder how much is actually in the book and how much they've actually thought about, and then how much is going to be FAQ'd on the forums.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, and inevitably, don't get me wrong, I admire the effort. I think it's worthwhile to excuse me, kind of streamline the rules. And I know some people hate the RRG format. I think it's fine to do sort of a here's how you play the game followed by a keyword glossary kind of thing. I think that's all like totally noble and great, and I'm glad they're doing that. But you will always get in a game like a miniatures game where words matter a lot. You will always get casualties when you do something like that, and they're going to have to kind of, regardless of whether you like the rules or not, they're going to have to work through those casualties, kind of, as they go through. Because there's going to be some keyword or some rule where you're looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, that's not how that worked before. Like, did they do this on purpose, or did they just forget a word? Did they forget to transpose the one sentence in this keyword that completely changes how it works?
Yeah.
Or did they actually change this keyword? So,
who I don't envy out of this whole thing is the judges at LVO and at Worlds. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was excuse me, having a conversation about like, well, this is great. It's going to really clean up judge calls and make everything less ambiguous. And I'm thinking to myself, like, between my 6 games at Nova and my 5 games at PAX, which is 11 games, I think I had a total of 4 judge calls.
Yep.
Across all 11 games. And generally for both events, like, judge calls were pretty sparse in general. I don't know if you guys have different observations about those.
No, John and I had 2 or 3 ourselves. So for our game, like, I mean, it's part of, like, it just is what it is. And I think,
well, sorry, I meant like 4 total across 11 games. Like,
no, we had like 4 for like our.
Okay.
I tend to get a lot. We'll find like scenarios, and I don't like to. I really try not to. It's not even bullying, but I don't want to intimidate my opponent into accepting that this is how it is.
Yeah.
Like, so if I tell them how it is and then they don't believe me right away, I'm like, all right, that's all right. We could get a judge.
Yeah.
I can pull it up for you.
I will say, John, and you're to like back you up with that. One of the incredible things that I noticed that you do too is that when we call the judge, like, some people try to plead their case to the judge. Like, John doesn't at all. He's just like, here's the facts. Here's the facts, and then that's it. Like, that's how we did it, and I really appreciated that, John, because like, it was just those. And I think for John and I, it was more like, we're friends, so we didn't really want to make the call one way or another, like, because it's going to go in somebody's favor, and we're just
and then we're also friends with the judges, so we don't want them to know who helps, really, like.
Yeah,
just you want to help them stay unbiased,
right?
Like,
so here's the facts. Just, is this? What do you think?
Yeah.
And then which was nice.
Yeah.
And that's how you should do judge calls, right? There's
Yeah.
a couple things. I'm not saying judge calls are good or bad. My core point with that simply is like I don't
All
feel
right.
like there was that many judge calls in Legion anyway.
Yeah.
No.
But you should never feel bad about calling a judge. That's what they're there for. It's literally their job. Don't think that it's some stigma that you think your opponent has done something wrong or whatever. Like
Yeah.
if there's any ambiguity, just call a judge. It's their job. But also, yeah, when they get there, just give them the facts. Don't try and plead your case. This is not a court of law, right? And you're not an attorney. So they get there, just tell them what it is your question is. If they have follow-up questions, clearly let them ask the follow-up questions. But like, yeah, don't plead with the judge. They're not there for that. They just want the facts. They want to make a decision and they want to move on. So yeah, it's great that you do that. But yeah, I don't feel like Legion had a ton of judge calls anyway. So
No, so for those of you at home that maybe you don't play competitive as much, 99% of my judge calls are, can I see that unit? Like, and what kind of cover do they have? That's like that's most of them. Like that's
which makes sense because for rules and stuff at the competitive level, like most people know the rules.
Yep.
So you're not going to have a lot of rules questions. I think 2 of my 4 judge calls that I'm thinking of over those 2 events were related to transports, which I just don't run. So those were like rules questions. One was a line of sight. One was one of those situations you referenced, John, where it's like my opponent was like utterly convinced that a rule was one way and I wasn't really going to argue with him. So I'm just like, sure, let's just ask the judge how this works. It was the box conditions, it was like, he was convinced that supplies only get 1 charge and it's like, no, you flip it over and then so they get 2 charges. And I was like, but it's not even worth like trying to figure this out or look it up. Let's just call a judge and see what they say. So
you didn't use Legion Quick Guide?
No. It was one of those things the judge was like 3 tables away.
No,
it was just way faster to be like, hey, how many charges do supplies get? 2. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
No,
and that's and you should calling judges should never be a negative thing.
Right.
It's always a positive thing to just help the game move and for you and your opponent to be on the same level, right? It's not a like, hey, I'm gonna win this judge call. It's like, no, I just need to know what the rule is here so that we're both playing by the same, we should all be playing by the same rules. That's what this is all about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think here's the problem though, right? This game's been out for 4 or 5 years, 5 years coming up in March, right?
Yeah.
And so we all still, like, even Kyle just said like, yeah, I don't really know the rules around that 100%. So now imagine having to judge an event. Well, the first one's going to be 10 days after the new rules come out. And then the second one's literally going to be about a month and a week or 2 after the rules come out, and having to like sit down, read the rules, and then hopefully make the right calls during judging duties. Oh man, I don't envy any of those people. It's going to be hard for sure.
And if you're playing at one of those events, please, for the love of your judges, dive into the rules before you go. And like get some practice games in.
Like we've got a tournament I think 5 days after the rules drop, and I'm gonna try and like put together all the big changes. And then Arizona Crew's gonna storm Vegas.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
just
Like
try
10 people going, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we're all gonna have to study, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody study. And we're going to have a very helpful article on the 5th Trooper too, probably, that outlines all the changes.
I hope so. That's how I learn everything. I just literally wait for the smart people on the team to do something, and then I just read or listen into it, and then that's how I'm like, got it. I don't actually go read the rules myself. I just see what Evan writes and then go,
He calls it editing.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to edit this, Evan.
Yeah,
that seems right. Speaking of which, any of these rules changes that we've been talking about and points changes over the last month or so, or 3 weeks, we have blog. posts on all of them, very
Yep.
in depth. Evan did a great job.
Yep.
I rarely read our blog posts, only the rules change ones, and Evan did a fantastic job on all of those. So
Yeah, what did he call them? Like he called them like Christmas songs or
Yeah,
something.
it's
It was
based on
funny.
the 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was
On the
great.
4th day of new rules.
yeah, and
AMG
even
gave to
he
me. Yeah, that
yeah,
was
he
funny
even
stuff.
did like breakdowns of the winners and losers of each all the rules. Like he did a great job, and so I highly recommend reading that. It goes more in depth into different areas. So
Yep. thefifthtrooper.com/blog.
hmm yeah. I don't know. I think that's good enough. Let's just close this down.
Yeah, I'm with you.
We did it. Like I know we had LVO list waffling, but are you really gonna know what you're bringing until the 16th? Probably not. I mean, Kyle, you'll know.
Yeah.
But most
If-
everybody else.
unless there's a giant landmine waiting in those rules, I'm bringing Blizzard Force.
I'm kind of praying for a giant landmine.
I mean, look, it needs one. But
Yeah.
if it doesn't get one, that's what I'm running because,
Yeah. I think if it doesn't get a huge benefit, I'm probably sticking at some form of Yoda Chewy barks.
Yoda gets a huge benefit from the panic changes.
He does. Yeah. One of his like his mobility is similarly devalued, but he doesn't rely on it as much as like Luke does. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
Hmm.
And he could jump on his mobility turn, so
Right.
he doesn't lose anything at all.
Yeah. And now he can just not that he wouldn't just win hostage anyway, but if you happen to have a box carrier that's like within range 4 of Yoda on the last turn after it goes, he can just make
Yeah.
it score 0 points.
Goodbye.
And your opponent can't pick it up.
Yeah, hey, listen, I don't know. It's all good. It'll all wash out, and in a year from now, we'll be talking about how different the game is, I guess. Who knows?
Hopefully not that different.
Well, we'll be talking about the new Ewok meta. Can't wait.
Heyo.
Oh, I
Yep.
can't wait. I'm
We'll
hard
see.
in. I'm so hard in the Ewoks. I don't even care if they're the worst. I'm literally that's all I'm playing.
They're going to be a great.
I can't,
Yeah,
God.
I'm with you, Jay. I loved like Orcs and Goblins from
Yep.
Warhammer Fantasy, and that's exactly what it's going to be. Except you can probably also take Jedi Luke.
Oh,
Heyo.
So then,
God. Dude, that
Why not?
was Orcs and Goblin. I still have all my fantasy stuff. That was the biggest army I had. I had about almost 5,000 points, and this was like classic fantasy, like 8th edition. But like I had almost like 5,000 points of Orcs and Goblins because I just couldn't help myself. Like I would just I'm like, oh, those are cool. Like I just love that whole like insanity. I've said it before on the podcast. And if Ewoks are anywhere close to that insanity, I'm like hard in. And then the potential of having Chewie and an ATST, like I don't know, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm just so excited.
Rebel ATST. Yes, please.
They need a card. They need a command card,
Yeah.
like a 1-pip, right? That just like does like 8 damage with like impact 5 to any armored vehicle, right? Like, and
Nah,
it's just
give me a unique ATST so that I have to take Chewie and I can only take one. I'll play a couple lists with it.
They've
Yeah.
said that there is going to be a unique ATST.
oh, dude, I'm hard in.
That's gonna be it.
Except they've also said
Gonna
that they're
be
going to be bad
Chewie.
against vehicles, which doesn't really compute with me because if you can take an ATST and you can take Jedi Luke, they're not going to be bad against vehicles.
No.
But
Is it a ATST
Maybe they
with
just
no
meant the
impact on
Ewoks
their shots?
themselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
not the list, just the Ewok units.
Yeah.
But if Ewoks have dice, like, and if they have dice,
Unless they can't
proportionate-
critical or something.
yeah, they would have to do that because dice quantity is big.
I just want Ewoks like flying on like makeshift like gliders. I want like Ewok like catapults
Where they could jump down but not up.
Yeah,
Maybe they
oh,
speed 3 when they're going down from terrain.
so good.
That'd be fun.
Oh my god, catapults! Like I just want the like drunk Ewoks. I want it all. Like I just magic, like they got that, like the oh my god, I want the whole thing.
Which magic?
Oh my god, that would be so good.
Ewok magic.
Yeah.
Making me want to play Ewok Hunt from Battlefront.
Yeah, they get like, so you know how they have Jedi Hunter, but they have like Stormtrooper Hunter. Oh my god, that would be great. Like
there you go. They get Surge Crit
yeah.
against Stormtroopers.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Dude, that would be so good.
Any Imperial core unit.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
like
Empire
it.
nerf right there. They just lose to Ewoks automatically.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Ewoks gain 50% attack value against
Yeah.
Empire.
Yeah. Anywho.
Those armor piercing bows and arrows, man.
Oh, dude, you could have them like so that they could hide and like randomly pop out like with like Cad Bane tokens, but like it's like entire Ewok units. They just like pop out of the bush. Oh my god. So good.
Possibilities are endless.
I wish my PAX gift card was good long enough to order Ewoks, but I don't think it's going to be.
Oh, and then maybe there's like a command card where they like you actually like cook like one of the units, like and eat them.
That's a little dark, I think.
Yeah.
That went straight for it.
Was that too much?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Notorious Scoundrels. You got After Dark later.
Right. So,
Jay, they pulled those helmets off of the stormtroopers that defected from the Empire after the Battle of Endor.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Right. And they definitely weren't gonna cook Luke and those guys.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, that was just an initiation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, dude.
To keep him warm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like C-3PO is a commander.
Is very cold.
Yeah,
dude, this is gonna be so good.
C-3PO is their commander.
Yeah.
That would be.
All right. Well, first I'd like to find out what Dark Troopers and Gideon do. I assume we will find that out first.
Don't even care. I just want these Ewoks.
Yeah, I know.
No, yeah, the Dark Troopers are really that whole like face up, face down order token thing is real strange.
2 activations.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're expensive enough, that could be fine.
Yeah. They're like a speed one.
And if they hit hard enough, because they are, unlike the rest of the vehicles, they are subject to attrition.
Yeah.
I'm almost worried that they don't hit hard enough.
Yeah,
which is weird for me to say about an Imperial thing.
We haven't seen the upgrade weapons yet, right?
And they get 2.
Right.
So.
Yeah, there's the cricket bat, which is the Myrtleizer. I think it's the official name for it.
What?
Which I think is hilarious. Because I think that weapon does not appear in any official canon.
Okay.
I maybe I'm picking this up from a stream. I don't know. My understanding was that was from like concept art that they ended up not using for Mandalorian, and that they never actually named it, and that's similar to like the DF-90 Mortar Trooper. They actually got to like create a weapon name, and then they ended up calling it the Myrtleizer. So, which I think is hilarious. Gosh. Good job on that one.
Oh boy.
I'm still calling it the cricket bat in my head.
Yeah.
But and then there's some kind of critical gun that's like a Gatling gun or something.
Yeah, I listen, those are interesting, and I mean, I definitely get everything that comes out. Besides swoop bikes, that's the only thing I didn't get, and never will get. But no, I'm in on everything. It's Star Wars. I still love it, no matter what.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
I think that's good.
That is. I think it's
now
good.
It's good. Yeah. Now we're good.
Now we're fully cooked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fully cooked.
All right. We're the fully cooked Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jay.
I'm John Bushfax Bushman.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.